We're starting our video. Come, there we are. Well, hello everybody. It is 6:30. April, what is it? April 29th?
29th.
29th.
Oh, is it 29?
29th.
Oh,
Hey,
May
well,
1st is Sunday.
We
Okay.
should introduce ourselves. My name is Dan Sturgis. Off camera, we have the enigmatic Dr. Lee. Say hello, Lee.
Yeah, hello.
There you go. That was his hand. And the lovely to my right, this is Matilda Garrido, who joined us last month, and she was just such a hit, and everybody loved her so much, and a lot prettier to look at than my head, because Lee is still a little camera shy, and we can't show him because of the nature of his work during the day. He prefers to stay in the shadows, so to speak. So we are here. This is Spirit of Science. This is, how many shows have we done, Lee, so far?
I've written down actually.
We've done a handful of shows
This is
so
number
far.
8.
This is the 8th show we've done here at the Merchant's House. We are in the Merchant's House. We are in the front parlor of the Merchant's House. This is one of the formal parlors of the house, the front parlor. And let's see if we can't get some crazy camera work going, if we could somehow look at that go. We're looking at the rear parlor. Keep going. Oh, we see a picture of Mr. Treadwell right here where I'm pointing. Lovely Mr. Treadwell. And that is the formal dining room where the family would have their celebratory meals, Christmas, Easter, and whatnot, birthdays. And then this would be the entertaining, I'm guessing, parlor. There's a piano right behind us. If we go the other way, we should be able to see a picture of Mrs. Treadwell, of Eliza Treadwell, right above the red settee there. And then right behind me is a beautiful fireplace. There are two on this level. Below us is the everyday, the day-to-day living room, the family room, which is where the kids would do their homework and read and play music and sing and have a good time. But for the most part, this level was just for formal occasions, for the holidays and for the Christmas. And it's really, really lovely. Again, everything here in the house is original to the house. So these the furniture that we were just looking at, the dining table and all the silverware and the plates, these are all silverware and the plates that the Treadwells ate off of. So it's an amazing, really a time capsule here on 29 East 4th Street, and just encourage everybody to come down and visit this place. And not only for the lovely furniture and the 19th century living that we get to witness here, but for the spirits that probably, and we think, still hang around here. Now, Matilda's a volunteer here at the house. Have you had any experiences while you've been here?
Well, I haven't had any experiences. I have had certain feelings in certain rooms. It's not the rooms that are supposed to be the most haunted. Those rooms feel very clear to me, but there are other areas of the house that I feel, I want to say, I feel the sense of presence.
Oh, cool.
So, but I'm waiting, you know, I'm just being very patient, and I'm waiting to see. I had a small conversation with whoever is here, just saying, please don't scare me, that we can be friends.
Well, you know, there's nothing really to be scared of here. I mean, people are afraid of things they don't understand. So I could totally understand somebody coming in here and having experience and getting freaked out because they don't necessarily know that you can't get hurt, and spirits aren't necessarily evil just because they're a spirit.
Right.
I don't believe any of the Treadwells were evil people, and I don't think any of the spirits that we've encountered here were angry at us, and they seem to enjoy what we're doing. And yeah, so really nothing to be afraid of here. And
yeah, so I do have a question, actually.
Yeah.
Has there ever been, so just doing a little bit of reading for tonight, you know, 3 areas of sort of paranormal activity are identified there: poltergeists, hauntings, and ghosts, right? The 3 are different.
Yeah.
Ghosts apparently interact with the living, or try to interact with the living. Hauntings are sort of events that are frozen in time, and maybe like there's a glitch and we might turn around and see someone sitting on that settee, you know, as if 100 years ago and today got pushed together.
Right. Well, yeah, there's the big three. I mean, there's subcategories underneath all of them. In parapsychology, they would call, I think that the TV shows call them intelligent hauntings. In parapsychology, it's called an apparitional haunting. And that is like what you said, there is information exchange back and forth. The spirit is aware of the people, the living people, and the people are aware of the spirit, and there is interaction, and there's information that's going back and forth that can be verified. Famous case, Lloyd Auerbach, my good friend and mentor in San Francisco, did one where he was speaking, did an investigation where he was speaking to a young boy who was a medium, and had no idea, but he was dealing with the old woman who used to live in the house. And he looked at her as like a grandmother figure, and she was able to, through the boy, give a phone number of the nursing home where her brother was living. And here's the number, call it and ask and just tell, you know, tell my brother that I was thinking of him. And sure enough, they called that number and that person's name was at the nursing home. And yeah, amazing. So that's an apparitional or intelligent type of haunting. A haunting or residual or place memory in parapsychology, they call it a place memory. And that's just energy that has been absorbed by, and Lee could probably help us with this because this is more science, but energy has been absorbed by a location, either through the structure, through the wood, or in the minerals in the earth, but somehow this energy, which can't be created or destroyed, it just transfers, has been absorbed. And while science doesn't know what the trigger is, whatever those triggers have to be atmospherically, or you have to have the right person in the right frame of mind to perceive what has happened before. And it doesn't have to be hundreds of years before, it could be months before. It's just this energy that has been absorbed by the location, and whatever the trigger is, it is released, or people, maybe it's released all the time and you just have to have the right person to see it, like a film strip. And then poltergeist activity, which we're going to talk about tonight, poltergeist activity is something, you know, and you asked me when you came in, we were talking about poltergeist being spirits, and that's not necessarily the case. Lee, I have to ask you about the place memory haunting and energy being released.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, like all fields of sciences like start with just kind of trying to describe as well as they can what is happening, what they're seeing, and you start off with labeling things so you can actually communicate about it. And so at least the way I see it, you know, these three categories, they're categories made to kind of describe, oh, there seems to be a general pattern of like a category of things happening this way and a category of things happening that way. But then like the background cause of like why this type of, you know, like the place memory haunting happens like this is because like the energy stored in the house and stuff. That stuff, at least as far as I know, you know, it's all just kind of, it's guessed at because like, okay, how can we have something located attached to just this house and have it just replayed? Like maybe it's attached to somehow physically ingrained into the rock or whatever. But I mean, if you want to simplify things as much as possible, you know, like in physics, they're always trying to come down to like one equation that explains everything. In general, that's a general trend in science to try to look for the most elegant, simple, you know, solution to a problem. If you're looking for the most simple explanation for this, and it's not all that simple, but like relatively simple, is kind of along the lines of what you were saying, Dan, about like, you know, there's nothing to fear here because the Treadwells, if it is their spirits here, they weren't bad people, so why would they be bad spirits, right? So if you go with that general assumption of like spirits are just like the people that they were before they died, right? Same personality, you might be able to explain all these different categories of, you know, hauntings of just like, it just depends on the type of person, right? So if I take you and I send you into a room in which I've put a random person from planet Earth, right? Some of those people might be really, you know, crazy and throw stuff around the room, right? They're really excited. Some of them might be quiet and keep to themselves and like, you know, they ignore you and go about their daily business, and maybe they have a habit that they do every day. And some of them might want try to interact with you, right? And so just from like the different types of person, you'd have a different type of spirit, and like maybe those three categories of hauntings are really just three categories of human beings, your personalities, right?
Right.
Mhm.
And like some like to throw stuff, some like to interact, some like to just go and have their tea every day and don't give a crap about you.
Right, right. Yeah, and and people, I hear a lot of evil spirits.
Yes,
Oh, I
uh-huh.
encountered an evil spirit and they
Yes,
were rude to me,
yes.
and I go, I don't necessarily believe in evil spirits where you've got this spirit and it, it's I'm
demon.
evil.
It's mean,
And
wants to
it's,
hurt you.
yeah, I think it's just if you've got, all right, I don't know if there's any kids, but earmuffs. If a guy's an asshole when he's
Exactly.
alive,
Yeah.
Mhm.
if he's
Why
going
would
to
they
come back
change
as a spirit, he's probably going to be an asshole. And maybe those are those evil spirits
Yeah.
of people that are being harmful to somebody who's perceiving the haunting. So
And once you're invisible and people can't see you, if you are bad, now you can be even worse, right?
oh my
You can,
God,
like,
I would
scare
love
people
that.
more
I
and
might
stuff.
turn bad if I was able to be invisible.
Exactly.
But we're here tonight to talk about poltergeists.
Mhm.
Now, Matilda, what did you tell me when you first came in when we were talking about poltergeists?
So I'm gonna date myself. My first
I
like
date myself. I date
introduction,
myself every weekend. But go ahead.
my first introduction to Poltergeist was the movie Poltergeist,
Right.
right? So like that conveyed this image of this very evil,
Right.
like, intent on harm spirit. So of course I was like immediately enthralled and like, dabbled a little bit, did some research, then started reading that they were possibly more sort of like little trickster fragments
Mhm.
of spirit things wanting to come and just play around with people, but
Right.
that they didn't really want to hurt you.
Right.
But I'm guessing that neither of those is accurate.
Well, of course we don't know this
Exactly.
100% for sure, but it seems anyway through parapsychology. Poltergeist gets used, that word gets thrown around a lot. And in German, it translates to noisy ghost or noisy spirit. And with that movie, of course, people, immediately go to something evil. But in the
Yeah.
beginning of that movie, the first things that they were experiencing was total poltergeist activity with
Uh-huh.
the chairs sliding across the kitchen and then stacking themselves. And this is all really sort of cliche poltergeist activity, scratches on the walls, bangs on the walls. Sometimes you can hear voices, people having a party.
Taps on the wall and stuff.
Yeah, raps, growls, and it's not spirit based. It's not the spirit of it's not somebody's consciousness that has survived bodily death. It's not an evil spirit that is, come out of a Ouija board.
Right, it's not a demon, right?
Yeah, it's not a demon. It's coming from what they call a living agent, who is under some kind of stress that they aren't able to, or don't even know that they're under that stress. They aren't able to express it outwardly, almost like a mental temper tantrum. And it happens without their knowledge.
Mhm.
And while they might experience everything, it usually will center around this living agent.
Mhm.
And this living agent will experience all the same things that it's usually with a family, not realizing that it's coming from them. I've worked on a couple of poltergeist cases, and we can talk about that later. And I've got a cool video for everybody to look at.
Yeah,
We'll
awesome.
play something that happened here too that I think was more poltergeist than spirit related. But instead of poltergeist, I know the parapsychologists use the word, and it was coined by William Roll, called RSPK, recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis, which is it's happening and it's spontaneous and it's mind over matter. Usually centers around one person. That person is usually a younger person, and it's usually a female. It's around the
Right.
time when maybe people or kids are going through puberty
Right.
and hormones are changing and they're under
And does that
tremendous amount
provide
of
like
stress.
the opening? Does that provide sort of like a?
Yeah, I just think all that energy has to come out, and they can't go, wow, I'm so frustrated, and or they don't even know to do that, to
Right.
express themselves. So it's happening, and you can usually, by what's happening, you can usually pinpoint who the agent is.
Mhm.
And that's
Yeah.
along the lines of, like you're talking about sort of what a poltergeist is, and you've gone through exactly like sort of the data that was collected to get to that point, which
Right.
is, like you said, like Roll and others like realize this pattern of like whenever stuff was moving around, like it was generally centered around one person.
Right.
Then they even actually did like measurements. They would measure like which objects moved and how far away they were
Right.
from the person.
Sure. And
That
the
they
person
thought
doesn't even
was
have to be at the house. They don't even
Exactly.
have to be at the location. They can be
Yeah.
at work
Yeah.
and have something happen.
Although they found that like with distance from that person, the statistical probability of something happening, moving, like
Mhm.
decreased. So there was
Yeah.
kind of some relation to distance to them, which kind of helped tie them like, oh, it must be this person that's somehow
Right.
causing it. You know?
Right. Yeah, really cool. And probably the most famous, what everybody knows, this 1980s movie called The Entity. And yeah, which was
That
really,
movie was
really
frightening.
Yeah, it really was, where a woman was being attacked. And again, it doesn't have to be a younger person.
Mhm.
It can be an adult, female, male, it doesn't matter. It's just you need somebody who's under some kind of stress that they aren't able to express for whatever reason. It could be subconscious and unconscious even, and it's expressed outward like a mental temper tantrum, I like to say. But Barry Taft, who's a friend of mine, and he was the original investigator. They have a character based on him in the movie.
That the movie's based off of.
Yeah, The Entity, and really nice man, Barry. He very generous with his time and his knowledge. But it was a poltergeist case, and the mom was the living agent, and it was manifesting on her where she would have bruises around her neck. They would see her get thrown up against the wall, and they would see her neck, being squeezed, and it was coming from her.
So she was projecting this energy out, and it was coming back
at
to
her because of a lot of guilt and a lot
Yeah.
of unverified things that might have been going on in the family, some sexual
So
abuse.
Did anything ever happen to her when she wasn't in this house,
Yes.
this location?
Yes,
It
yes,
followed her around.
yep. And because it was her.
Mhm.
Yeah, but a pattern I saw from the early
Mhm.
research of Roll was like, in general, they found that, at least with some of the people, like it seemed centered in a particular location,
Right.
a particular house. And
With-
like, when
with-
a kid goes to school, it didn't happen to the school, it didn't happen to this.
Right, when they came back.
Yeah.
With her, there was a lot of, if you read up on it, the movie presented her as like a sort of a normal, level-headed woman.
Right.
And apparently she had a lot of problems and a lot of issues and was dealing with a lot of stuff and a lot of guilt. So the attention she was getting, I think she enjoyed that
Right.
and needed that. So I think maybe that's why it was following her around.
So that's a key point. What you said earlier, like people don't realize it's happening. They probably don't at the beginning. They don't realize they're doing it.
Yeah.
But then, like you said, like she might have kind of enjoyed that once she gets attention, etc.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That seems
Yeah.
like a general pattern too.
Well, and then suddenly you're unique. You're
Exactly.
unique.
Yeah.
And it's interesting if you go back and look at that case file, which you can find online, and you could actually email Barry and he'll send you all his stuff. They were catching, streaks of light in bedrooms that would light up the room, and they would take a picture and catch it. Really phenomenal stuff that was happening. But that's probably one of the most famous poltergeist cases that was real. And then the movie Poltergeist was really put the word poltergeist on the map for the general public.
Along those lines of like, the person originally not realizing it's them, and then they start enjoying it. That sort of ties into with another thing that we talked about in the past, which is like there are a lot of cases where something weird is happening, and people will see totally inexplicable things, people throwing against the wall, whatever. But then maybe like after a month of this happening, and somebody else comes to the house, and they might see like the kids like actually pick something up and like throw it and be like, look, it's a poltergeist.
Right.
And so that's like a pattern that seems to sometimes come about too, right? They've noticed like sometimes they go to a house and it's like a total fake. Sometimes they go to a house and like nobody can explain anything ever. And sometimes they go to a house and something seem legit, but then they'll see the person also like do something fake.
Right.
And if, that pattern might emerge from that kind of activity, right? It's
Sure.
like it starts off, you don't even realize you're doing this legit activity, and then you get all this attention, you want to maintain it,
Right.
and you start just enhancing it by throwing stuff around yourself.
Well, I think that actually happened, the haunting of Alma Fielding, which was an English poltergeist case. She would sort of objects would manifest from her. Well, it started out like as what you say, like a poltergeist energy coming
seemed
from
like it
her,
was legitimate.
emanating from her.
Yeah.
But then they would like bring her to places and they would see if all of these objects, like they would search her and she didn't have any of these items on her.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, like, you know, a piece of jewelry would just like manifest from her.
Mhm.
But then they found out that she was somehow
Like hiding
engineering
things or
this.
whatever.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that's frustrating. Yeah, it's like for those cases, you don't know, like, hey, was the original stuff fake too, or did it just become fake because they wanted to keep the attention going, or
Yeah.
I've run into doing investigations, especially private home investigations, where people will, you know, have legit stuff going on and they'll bring me in but they'll be worried that it won't happen when I'm
exactly.
here.
Yeah.
And so they'll gild the lily a little bit. And you know, it's so simple to catch people doing that. And I've said, hey guy, you know, why is this speaker over here? You know,
Actually happened. Like
no, a guy put a speaker behind wood paneling and I found it with an EMF meter. And he said, I didn't want to waste your time. And if nothing was going to happen, I was just going to play a recording that I recorded here at the house. So it was real recording, but I want you to hear it. I said, well, you could just play it for me, man.
Really? Was it actually like, did you have to like pry out wooden panels?
No, I asked him. I said, what's, that's where it was coming. I
He's
could
like,
hear
oh, there might be a speaker hidden behind.
I told him, I said, is there a speaker back there? And he said, yeah, there is. It was a little like car speaker that he rigged up.
But I mean, that's natural, right? Like if I'm in the kitchen and objects start to move, the first thing I'm going to think is, am I going crazy?
Yeah, sure.
You know, so if no one else witnesses it, then I'm definitely going crazy, right?
Yeah, and you know, when you have a toothache and you get your dentist appointment,
exactly. And then
when does your toothache go away?
Yeah.
The morning of the dentist appointment. So I'm thinking that these people.
No, it still hurts. Stick it out.
Yeah. I'm thinking that people now like, all right, I've got this guy coming over to do an investigation. I hope something happens, and they get nervous that they don't want to think that you're lying or that you're cuckoo. So
and you could end up in the paper, somebody saying like, oh, they were, you know, I went there, nothing happened, so they must have been bullshitting the whole time before.
Yeah.
So how do you know then? Like, how this guy with the speaker in the wall, how did you determine that it was?
Because it was too good to be true.
So you were
so he faked the whole thing.
I was hearing, well, it was in his basement. And as we were going down the stairs, suddenly I'm hearing, yeah, exactly. You know, it was a woman. It was a woman crying, you know, and when you hear that, and it was crystal clear, and it was loud, and like, he was behind on his phone, like so TV shows, and I'm going around, and I'm trying to. Speakers have magnets, and then boom, I found it. I said, wow, we've got a really high EMF spike right here, and right where the noise is coming out. And I said, there wouldn't have to be a speaker back there. Oh, yeah, I'm busted. You got it.
Nice.
And we've got somebody saying, hi, glad you're back tonight, Matilda. Who is it? Diane.
Hi,
Diane. Thanks, Diane. Yeah, if anybody has any questions or comments or anything like that, just please, there's a little chat column. You can send a message or a question, or just say hi. That would be cool. But all right, so we'll keep talking about poltergeist.
Yeah, let's start at the beginning, right? Okay, so like someone is going through something, they have a lot of energy that's stored. It's not, they're not consciously dealing with it, working it out.
Right.
And so they project that energy and they make things move, or they make sounds, or walk me through it.
Well, you know, it's, I would tell you a case I worked on in Queens, and I get a call from a woman, and her child had just moved into this new nice apartment, and I said, well, what type of things are happening? And she said, well, the lights flicker on and off, the TV changes channels, the hair dryer in the bathroom will just turn on. Sometimes I'll hear it on, but when I go in, it's not plugged in, but I can hear that it's on. It's not hot, but I can hear it running. And I said, let me just ask you a question. You have a daughter? And she went, yes. And I said, is she 11, 12, 13? And she went, yes. And I said, I think it's probably has something to do with your daughter. And I said, I'll come out. I don't want to hear anything about what's going on. I want to come out and meet you in person. So went out with another friend of mine, and
first you asked, do you have any speakers in your wall?
And now she sounded cool. She was so cool, and
yeah, you mentioned before, like you can kind of
down to earth.
their voice, like likelihood of.
She was
taking it
frightened. She
further.
was scared. She didn't know what was going on.
Mm.
So,
And she's a single woman, right? Living with
well,
her
yeah, I'll
daughter.
get to that.
That's very interesting because
Mhm.
the Enfield poltergeist was also a single mother.
Well,
living.
when I started to talk to her when I got out there, she said, "Why do you think it's my daughter? So it's haunting my daughter." I said, "Nobody's haunting anybody here." I said, it's your daughter is freaking out about something." And as it turns out, she had just separated from her husband and moved from Brooklyn to Queens. So the girl was in a new school. She was a big girl, and I think she might have been getting bullied, but she didn't want to tell her mom because they had just moved in here. The mom just left the husband.
Yeah.
And I said, "It's your daughter. Talk to your daughter. She's freaking out about something." She goes, "I don't think you're right." I said, "Okay." So the daughter was coming home from school to meet us. And she comes in, "Oh, you're going to get rid of the ghost." "Yeah, we're going to get rid of the ghost." And as she went through the kitchen, because she had to go through the kitchen to get to the bedrooms, all the kitchen cameras went pop, 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 as she walked
While
by.
you were there?
Yeah,
That's
yeah, we heard.
awesome.
We heard him. And she went, she goes, "It's the ghost, it's the ghost." And she ran away. And you know, some of them were open, some of them were closed. And I said, "Talk to your daughter. Talk to
Nice.
your daughter." And like 2 weeks later, I followed up with her and she said, "Everything's fine. My daughter wasn't happy in her new school, and she didn't want to make me feel guilty
That's
for
the thing.
putting
With
in her
these
new
influence
school."
with a kid, yeah, it just kind of fades away after a couple
Yeah.
months or something, or a year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah. And what's that book you got there? There are great books out on poltergeist phenomena.
So one thing that's really interesting that it seems like a consistent pattern, I just remembered, is like when things fly around, you know, not necessarily when lights are flickering, but when things like physically are flying around, a lot of times there's this weird like explosion sound or like a crashing sound when the object lands somewhere, even if the object's totally fine. Right, so the object will get like thrown across the room or land on the floor, be totally fine, not broken, but there'll be like a big bang.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating. You know, it's like, what is this some kind of electrical discharge or something? Or
you know what's cool is also because it's stress induced, right? The most haunted house I'd ever been to is in
stress correlated, stress related.
Okay, stress induced, right.
Correlation doesn't equal causation.
The most haunted house I'd ever been to is in Valencia, California, and they had all kinds of stuff happening at the house, and I think they had a legit haunting, I believe, and there was a lot of place memory stuff going on as well. And I think those two things were freaking the people out that lived, and they were young kids that were living in the house, was freaking them out, and that was causing poltergeist effect. Because when we got there, we walked in the house, and the lights started dimming and flashing. I said, somebody's got to be doing that, because it was. I said, no, it's been doing it all day long. The kids were upstairs. Turns out, this gentleman and his wife had these kids, lived in this beautiful house, and the wife passed away, unfortunately, and then not long after, and seemed almost little inappropriately too short of a time period passed before this gentleman met a woman that he fell in love with, and they moved in together, and I think all of that was freaking the kids out, and the kids were at that age where their hormones might be going wild, and it was a boy and a girl.
Yeah, I mean, so it seems like a consistent pattern of, you know, in terms of explaining like why it sometimes only happens in one house or why sometimes might follow somebody around, is it seems like it's correlated with just kind of like you need a certain threshold of energy, right? And so for the instances that you know, discussed by William Roll in this book, where it seemed located specifically in a house, they actually found that the house itself, like even with nobody there, had like unusually high electromagnetic activity or something. It was maybe over an old stream or whatever.
Right.
And so then when you take that and combine that with this kid that has a lot of angst or whatever, like, you know, maybe you summate those energies or whatever, and that causes this activity. And maybe the instance with the lady where it followed her, maybe she just had so much angst she didn't need to combine that with like a house or whatever. And the example you just described kind of adds that too. It's like maybe there were actual, you know, something in the house, a hunting or whatever, and it was scaring the people, adding to that their angst, adding to that the father, you know, it all kind of accumulates. And in that kind of instance, like you wouldn't actually maybe expect it to follow the kids around, because it's only happens like in combination with like all this energy that's already in the house, right? Which kind of stomachs there. So that might be sort of a, you know, a consistent pattern that correlates with this activity. You know, in all these instances.
Well, what were we talking about also before, right when you came in, and I said, we should talk about this.
I think we were talking about place hauntings? Were we talking about place hauntings? Or was I saying that at one point with poltergeist, I was under the impression that they were a person that had come back
Right.
and attached themselves to a vulnerable individual and was basically like using that person.
Like
Right.
in the Poltergeist movie.
Yeah.
Possession.
Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I mean, again, all of this is,
Yeah, possible.
yeah, it's all possible,
We don't know.
and nobody knows for sure, but it seems, there are a lot smarter people than I who are investigating this and really doing a lot of research on this stuff.
Mhm.
And I know that a lot of big organizations, the military is researching how stress can affect electronics, especially imagine being in a tank battle and under all that stress, and you don't want that, messing up with your electronics in your tank.
Sure.
And also a lot of I think computer companies were doing research into what a person's state of mind, can that affect your computer, can it affect your cell phone when you're really in a bad mood. That cell phone never connects, does it? Or I can be freaking out about something in my apartment and have to restart my computer a bunch of times, and is that because of me?
Yeah.
Or do I just have a crappy computer, which is probably the case, but
Well, yeah, along those lines, it can be a combination of those things too. I mean, it seems like there may be particular people that are more capable of having these effects, whether they want to or not.
I mean, the first time we did the show, remember the computer crashed?
Yeah.
A couple times. I had to go out and buy a new laptop just to be sure that it wasn't that, and it wasn't. I went home and turned it.
These people,
Yeah, I might be.
So people are going to ask, are there poltergeists here at the Merchant's House?
Well, again, it depends who else is here,
Yeah.
a living agent.
Mhm.
It might just be the added energy phenomena, and maybe if there's a lot of people here with a certain energy.
There was I'm going to play an audio clip, and let me see where it is. And it's the only time that I've been here where I believe some PK phenomena happened. And I'll tell a little story. We were right above this room. We were in Seabury's room, and there was probably 6 people on this investigation, and we were sitting on the floor. I was sitting in a chair in the corner next to the closet as you walk into Seabury's room on the right hand side, and my friend Stephanie was talking, and she was asking something about the lights. And it doesn't sound loud on this clip, obviously, but when we were in that room, it was a really loud boom, like somebody kicked the door. The door didn't move. Everybody heard it. I jumped up out of the chair. It startled everybody because it was so loud, and everybody sort of attributed to Mr. Treadwell, Seabury's angry. And I'm like, I don't think it's angry. Now, turns out somebody, and I'm not going to blow them up, but somebody in the group is epileptic and suffers from epilepsy. And that is there's lots of scientists doing research into paranormal phenomena and people with epilepsy. And I have walked down the street with this person and seen streetlights pop off as we walk underneath them. It's pretty crazy. But I'm going to play that now. I think you guys should be able to hear it. And you'll hear my friend Stephanie at a loss for words, which never happens.
Does somebody want these lights turned off?
Yeah, it's really hard to hear.
No, that was loud as
What
heck.
was that,
Yeah.
Tim? Did you do that?
That's crazy. If you were like the only 3 people in a room and there's nobody else walking around the house and I heard that,
Oh yeah,
Right.
I would be terrified.
Hey, look, you hear go.
I'm either seeing
Yeah, she's never.
That's a loud thing, yeah.
It was very, very loud when it happened.
Yeah. Sounds like the door being slammed, like you said. Or
Yes.
locked up
Yep.
there.
And there was nothing in that room. Now, could somebody type a little message? Could you hear that? If somebody would be so kind. But that was the only instance of what I would consider poltergeist phenomena that has happened here, that I would say that was not spirit related. We've heard footsteps. We've heard footsteps coming up and down the stairs. Things have gone missing, which is a big thing that happens in a poltergeist case where somebody might put their keys down and then they'll disappear. You know, they won't be able to find them. I just had them here and they're in another part of the room. I don't know how that happens.
Yeah, there's some crazy
Yeah.
cases of poltergeist activity where they see not just stuff disappear, but stuff materialize out of the air, like you were saying, out of the person. But sometimes they've seen like gravel like materialize out of the air above the house and just like fall.
Yeah, yeah, which was in that movie Poltergeist, which they had a lot of crazy things. It's called aports.
Yeah.
And on my very first investigation in upstate New York, walked up the steps of this house and got to the top step, and it was heavy, heavy. And I'm trying to be a diligent investigator, and I'm blowing around my EMF meter, and coins and thumbtacks fell out of the ceiling of this bedroom. And
that seems so. It seems so unbelievable to me that could manifest from someone. I mean, I'm not saying I don't believe it. I'm trying to understand.
Like at first, we were walking out of the room and we heard a coin, a very distinct. It was like a quarter landed on the floor, and you hear it. You know what that sounds like.
Yeah.
And okay, and people are asking about what's been going on in the merchant's house. We'll talk about that. But a coin fell out, and then we were like, oh wow, we took pictures, we had the EMF meter out, we were doing everything that we watched on Ghost Hunters, you know, we were doing that. And as we were leaving, we heard something else fall on the ground, and it was a thumbtack, and it had a little frog character on it, like a push pin. And we asked the homeowner, we said,
it had like a drawing of like a cartoon.
No, it was like a plastic frog that was a thumbtack. You know?
Crazy. It's like materializing, not just like generic, like big thumbtack. It's like a frog.
It was
But they make those. They make them.
Yeah. But it was. I asked her. I said, "Is this from your house?" And she said, "Yeah, that we have that on our corkboard
ported from there
downstairs. Yeah, with pictures that the kids would draw at school, and they were thumbtack them onto their corkboard, and it ended up. And she goes, she would find change. She would say, I found change in the shower. Like in the soap dish. She would find change in there. She goes, I never thought it was something where I thought maybe my husband was.
Well, do you know what's interesting is a lot of times mediums will tell people, if you start finding quarters around, that's your dad. Your dad's coming and leaving you quarters. So
I mean, who knows?
Who knows, right? Dimes, I've heard dimes. And I'm going to play a video of, I'll give you a little backstory of this. I'm going to have to share my screen. I live all the way uptown in Inwood on 207th Street. And for a long time, nobody knew what I did. And I did this. And every once in a while, I have a picture in the paper, or somebody would see me on a news program or something like that. And go, oh, you're the ghost guy. And a girl that lives in my building, and I'd seen her and her boyfriend. It was a fiance a couple of times, and an attractive couple. They were cool. They lived two floors above me. And then the same, their apartment was the same as mine. It was B. I'm 2B and they were 4B. I hadn't seen them in a while, and finally the girl, I saw her in our courtyard, and she said, you're a ghost guy? And you look, I said, yeah. She goes, I have a ghost in my apartment. And I said, oh, okay. And she told me everything that was going on, and she was hearing dishes rattle and things moving. And I said something about her boyfriend. She said, oh no, we split up. And I come to find out that her boyfriend left her, moved to Texas with a girl. He was having an affair with some girl. They moved to Texas and opened up a restaurant, and that was sort of their plan.
Oh.
So she was really, really upset, and I think that was causing some poltergeist phenomenon. And so I said, and just to be completely honest, she was really, really pretty, and I was always like, hey, we're single now, I'll come up with my cameras. And went up and set up a camera, and I'm going to share my screen right now and play this video.
So this video is actually from that.
Yeah. Oh, now they would see it. So, all right, can you watch on that? Are you on?
Yeah, I saw it earlier.
Okay, so what you can see my cursor here. This right here is this is obviously her kitchen. It's a tri-field natural EMF meter, which will only measure fluctuations in natural electromagnetic fields. Now, I just thought this big giant window, now there is a fire escape outside that window.
Yeah.
And I thought maybe she's got some kind of creepy neighbor
Mm-hmm.
who was maybe trying to be a peeping Tom, and not me. I would never thought of that. But I focused my camera there. Now you'll hear the EMF meter squeal.
Was this left for like 2 days, 3 days, or was this like you left it for like an hour or?
Oh, maybe a half an hour, maybe a half an hour. And we were at the apartment across the hall from her. I just left the stuff and she was friends with the girl across the hall from her. And we heard the EMF squeal and we heard the noise, which I'll play you and you'll see this. Keep your eye on the teapot.
That's the EMF meter. That's the EMF meter. What? What?
So,
Hold on.
so what's that sound in the background though?
Right there, that's a plane going overhead, but the EMF is squealing.
So that wasn't the teapot boiling or something?
No, the stove wasn't on. But we heard the second clank.
When it
of the
clanked off.
teapot. Yeah. When it clanks off the burner. That one. We heard that.
So this is the type of video where, you know, if I saw it on like.
You would think it was
Paranormal 911,
BS.
I was like, okay, some guy string off camera. But like
100%.
the fact that you recorded this and like, you know, there was nobody in that apartment, you went across the hall, that's pretty freaking cool, dude.
Right.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and they met and they worked, they were baristas. And I just thought it was appropriate that it was the teapot that was
yeah.
moving.
Huh.
And you know, again, it's significant. And when people talk about poltergeist effect, they say what is happening usually points to the person
Yeah, somehow.
who it is. And I think she might have still been a barista. She was,
Mm.
you know, still working there. She ended up moving, and I inherited the teapot. She was like, take that teapot and go. And I had that teapot Christmas.
Yeah, so
And,
that's so interesting. So all these things kind of what you have described
Mhm.
sounds like a lot of unexpressed grief.
Yeah, oh, okay.
Angst or-
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep. And you know, we talked about this 2 shows ago, I think, when my dad passed away.
Mhm.
That night, things were happening in the house.
Yeah.
You know, things were
Yeah.
falling and noises and as my dad was transitioning, you know, my brother-in-law heard a voice and yeah, so I think, you know, it was a sad time, but also a happy time because he was suffering.
Mhm.
And but we were all stressed out. We were all
That's
stressed
really
out.
interesting.
Yeah.
I never thought about that. Yeah. Like that, you know, people said, at least I, you know, correlate that with like, oh, your dad's passing away, like maybe his spirit's like, you know, fluctuating around and causing stuff. But yeah, it might have been this summation of energy.
Yeah, and because it wasn't anything connected with my dad,
Yeah,
it was, you know, it was the lens of
Yeah.
the kitchen light fell out, which had
Yeah.
been in there for 40 years.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Well, my
And-
husband had an experience. I'm sorry. I didn't
No,
mean to
go
interrupt you.
ahead, go ahead.
He had an experience
New
where
chick cutting me off.
the night his grandmother died, the blind, which was down, it was like in the middle of the night, all of a sudden,
Wow.
Well,
like a tension rod,
Huh.
you know, and then
Wow.
his mom called and said, you know, your grandmother died.
Wow.
wait, okay, so it was at his house.
It was at his
Not
house
at
in
the
a
house.
different
Yeah,
country.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow,
Mhm.
that's amazing.
What'd you experience? All right, so let's see. This Kathleen or Kathy, what did you experience that was spirit related at the merchant's house? Okay, well, real quickly, well, I've experienced,
The bang thing, you know, like we
Yeah,
played that
that-
audio before, that was actually at the merchant's house.
yeah, the audio was right above us, Seabury's bedroom. And you know, we've heard footsteps. I haven't seen an apparition, but we have board members at the house,
Mhm.
Anthony Belov, who somebody looking down from one of the upper floors, looking down a staircase. Like I said, I've heard footsteps. I've seen under the crack of the door, I've seen the light being blocked,
Ooh,
like somebody was
that's-
walking.
oh.
And that was their second investigation here, where we did a seance, like a 19th century seance.
Mhm.
And everybody in the spirit circle, it's supposed to be 11 people, I think, in the circle. Everybody saw it. everybody was witnessing. We were going out and looking, and there was
Yeah.
nobody out
This
there.
door here, like.
It was the other door. We were right in the center. The
Oh.
circle was right in the center,
Okay.
and we were seeing sparks and little flashes of light above the mirrors, and both mirrors.
Awesome.
Yeah, and everybody, this is the second time we've been here.
And so interestingly, I mean, at least the possibility, if you want to tie this in with what we're talking about now, seances might really just be getting, like you said, 11 people or however many people together,
Mhm.
summoning all that energy. It might actually could be PK, like
Oh, sure.
poltergeist activity
Sure.
caused by the people at the seance.
Yeah, some macro PK and
Yeah.
intentional PK, that which is something that I think happens often, especially with electronics, where you're so desperate for something to happen. I want something to happen so bad that you actually create it to happen.
Yeah.
So when somebody, I have a great clip, and it's the museum director's favorite clip of our EMF buzzer going off on command.
I like that one, yeah.
Which doesn't necessarily mean there's a spirit there waving their hand over. It could be
Yeah.
coming from me or my friend Garrett, who was with us at the same
And
time.
I mean, so we keep coming back to so there's this correlation that seems to exist, like person that's or amount of energy, whatever, and things happening.
Mhm.
But then you eventually go down to okay, how is that actually happening? What's the mechanism? How is their mind
Right.
actually?
Yeah.
How could it cause that? And so if you try to get down to that level of detail, these studies where they thought, okay, if their mind is somehow affecting electronics or whatever, let's try to come up with the simplest, most controlled experiment you could do where you could prove that, right?
Mhm.
And so a lot of these experiments were done with a random number generator.
Mhm.
There are a lot of tricks to doing that experiment correctly, because there's a lot of things that you wouldn't think of that could influence that. But even when you control for all those things, you still get interesting patterns where it seems like, when people are focusing on it, they are able to see random, right? And that's still up for debate in scientific circles, because they say, the statistics may not be correct or whatever, but it's intriguing enough to look into it.
Yeah, I mean, the Global Consciousness Project is
which is that's really intriguing.
from Princeton.
Yeah,
And what that is, oh my God, I just blanked on the guy. I've known him for a while. I blanked on his name, the guy that
The one that ran the study.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
His wife's name is Lefty. I'm blanking. We could have him on the show. He'd be great to have on the show.
Cool. He's in New York, or?
He's in New Jersey.
Oh, cool.
But it's going to pop in my head as I'm talking. What the Global Consciousness Project is, he's got what they call eggs. And they are random event generators, random number generators. It's going to be 0 or 1, heads or tails, black or white. And they're all over the world. I think he's got 200 of them. They're all over the world. There's one, actually, we're going to have Lisette Coley on our show next month on the 20th. She actually has one of these eggs at her apartment. And they're constantly just flipping a coin, heads or tails, heads or tails, heads or tails, 1 or 2, and black or white. And they should be a consistent pattern.
Right.
And
or lack thereof. It should just be randomly oscillating.
Right. Yeah, not a straight line, but there should, but it should be in the center. It should be centered. And they've discovered that on global events, the death of Princess Diana during World Cups, that these things deviate. September 11th, they started deviating from random before the guys got on the plane.
Yeah.
Like people had a bad feeling.
Wow.
in a global sense.
That project is fascinating, and it'd be interesting to talk to the guy actually running it. But one danger with respect to that experiment versus the experiment where they put somebody in a room and all the variables are controlled, is at least the argument that a lot of skeptics give against that experiment is just you're just cherry picking, right? You pick some crazy event that happened in the world, and you see if something preceded it. If it didn't, you don't consider it. If it did, you consider it. So that's and I haven't dug enough into it to really see if that's the case, but that's the argument that a lot of skeptics are giving about it. And so coming back to how to properly, if you actually want to be able to convince people that something interesting is happening, these are the kind of things you have to consider, right? It's tough, right? The weirder something is, the more evidence you need to support it. Even if if you're just trying to prove something pretty standard, that amount of evidence is probably good enough to publish a paper and convince some people. But yeah, it's a hard experiment to really do, but if you look into the really well-controlled ones, it kind of leads you more into the possibility of okay, maybe this actually is happening on a global scale.
And what also is interesting is that on the 9/11, most of when it would deviate from random,
Yeah.
it would go up, and on 9/11 it went down, and which was significant to. Oh, his name just popped in my head, and now it's gone again. Roger Nelson. His name is Roger Nelson.
Right.
Yeah, Roger Nelson, and isn't that I Dream of Jeannie?
Yes,
Roger
Major
Yeah,
Nelson.
Major Nelson.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just having this conversation the other day.
Talking about dating ourselves, right?
Exactly.
Lee doesn't know about that. Do you know who
Oh.
Fonzie is?
Do
even?
you know?
You do? Okay.
Okay.
I worked with some guy who didn't know who Fonzie was.
Uh,
But it's when this gentleman was talking to me about this, he goes, just imagine, I flip a coin and you have to guess if it's head or tails. He goes, you should get 5 right, maybe you get 6 right, 4 wrong, maybe you get 4 right and 6 wrong. He goes, but it should be consistent. He goes, you get 10 wrong over and over and over. That's also significant.
Yes.
That you're not getting anything
Exactly.
right.
It can go in either direction.
So that's what was happening on 9/11. He thinks is that just people were having a really, really bad feeling.
So that was collective. It was like a collective.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Uh-huh.
what it's assumed. Yeah. So like Dan said, like they're just these little random number generators. It's a little circuit just plugged in it all over the world. I
Yeah,
guess,
and all the data gets fed into.
into one database.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
So the idea is like, yeah, it's sort of supposed to get sort of a collective, global or community-wide
Mhm.
accumulation of energy or whatever that's somehow affecting
Right.
these things.
Yeah.
So the one, yeah, and so like, let's say you want to actually do an experiment like that, the things that you do have to consider, like I was saying, like it gets complicated. You have to, like temperature will affect those.
Mhm.
So like increases or decreases in temperature will deviate that thing from random. Humidity, like a lot of atmospheric effects and stuff will also affect it. So you really have to try to control that as much as possible. And then
Right.
also even the type of random number generator. Some are like pseudo random number generators. So they do actually have this unintentional like pattern to them because it's not truly generated in random ways. And so that's really hard too. Like getting a true random number generator is actually, you have to pay a decent amount of money to get like a pretty expensive one and then control for those variables too.
Yeah, I mean, we run into that here at the merchant's house in the summer when, if I'm bringing my tri-field EMF meter out,
Yeah,
we
yeah,
heard
differently,
buzzing.
depending
When it's
on-
humid, New York City is humid, and it won't work in the humidity because where does static electricity, where does electricity go in the humidity? It gets dispersed through the moisture. So,
Or it'll work differently, yeah. So,
Yeah.
and you even said, when you used to do the investigations here, you would keep track of all those
Right.
atmospheric conditions stuff because
You
you
have
need
to. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
And that helps you
Yeah.
actually analyze your data correctly.
Mhm.
Otherwise you have things going crazy one day and you think it's because of X, but it's because it was raining out or because it wasn't raining out.
didn't we get when we had all these equipment set up,
Lightning.
the lightning, there was a lightning storm
Yeah,
that
yeah.
set off all your
Yeah, all the
sensors.
sensors would go off all at once. And then when we listened to the audio, you'd hear.
Boom,
back.
yeah, that was amazing stuff. And oh man, it's almost time to wrap up. That went quick. But Poltergeist, we were talking about Poltergeist.
But no, this all
went
makes
off on a-
sense. Like
on a tangent.
if people have energy, and what occurred to me too when you were talking about the seances and all the sparkles and stuff is so most people who attend a seance want to get in touch with someone who's died. So there's a lot of grief, there's a lot of yearning, and those people are actually in what we would call a liminal space, which is an in-between space, right? They're in the past, they're not totally in the future yet. And so maybe it's like that situation where the energy has to go someplace. It has to come out, it has to be expelled.
Right.
And a group of people who all really, really want something, maybe are creating something,
Sure.
something visual or something auditory.
So
Right.
along those lines, for the viewers, an excellent book to read if you're curious about this is called Conjuring Up Philip.
Philip,
And it's
Oh.
done by, like in Toronto, the
Uh-huh.
Psychical Society.
I've heard of that,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so they actually did an experiment where they got a bunch of people together. They created a fictional character, like they wrote down a little fake biography of like this prince or whatever that lived in whatever. And then they would try to like bring this person up in a seance, and they were able to get all these knocks on the walls and stuff, and like responses to questions and everything.
Table tipping.
Exactly, yeah. And so their hypothesis is like, oh, we essentially like we're using PK to create this fictional spirit PK, like
That's a great book, and it's an easy book to read. It's a
Yeah,
fun book
yeah.
to read.
Yeah, I do know someone who works here. I'm not going to name her, I'm not going to name him or her, who has experienced things like music turning off and on,
Mhm.
phone behaving oddly, things
Yeah.
like that.
I've heard the same from this person.
Yes.
Yeah, and actually, I tried to do an experiment along those lines. We didn't end up doing it, but I actually made like special phone app that simulated the phone app she was using when all this stuff would happen, so that she could
Well, he's
leave
the
it around
coolest. He's
and
the
see,
coolest.
see if like if the screen was activated in some way to track it.
Yeah.
We never ended up doing the experiment though. I don't know. We got sidetracked for other stuff. That reminds me of it. Maybe we should do it again.
Mhm.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah, we gotta, we need to start doing some stuff again.
Yeah.
It's
That's
fun.
fun.
Yeah, because people that when I'm working here, everybody walks in, not all, but everybody asks about the ghosts.
Wow.
Yeah. Cool.
You know, there's a definitely like a huge hunger for.
Yeah, yeah,
More.
and this is as
They want
close to a
more.
controlled environment as you can get out in the field,
Mhm.
Yeah.
as far as, for a haunting experiments, where
Yeah,
we know
especially in New York
it's
City.
only one family lived here. We know
Yeah.
pretty much
Everybody who lived here pretty
Yeah.
much.
when they
right,
were
or we have an
born, when they
idea.
passed away, and the history of the home and everything. It's just such a great place to be able to do this kind of work.
Yeah.
And we thank the Merchants House and the board and everybody for allowing us to do that.
Yeah,
And
it's amazing.
but listen, we got to wrap up. That went really, really fast. But
I
before
know.
we go, we got to talk a little bit about, and I'll see if I can get my Jedi powers to get the camera to look at some of this fine details up on the let me concentrate. Look at that. All this molding and all the detail in this house, which is so beautiful, and it's been here for 180 years, 175 years.
Yeah.
Somewhere the house was built in 1832. You do the math, and
That's right, 190 years.
yeah, and thank you. And there's a company and organization that wants to build a hotel right next door,
Mhm.
right behind us. And the vibration of that construction and the work, the years that it would take to build this hotel next to this delicately preserved home would destroy all this stuff. And all this molding would crumble, and it would just be a tragedy. It would be an epic tragedy to lose anything in this house. And I think, that this house would just crumble under all that construction. So the house is fighting this tooth and nail. Come by for a visit and donate your money to come in and take a tour. Anything you can do is going to help these people. They've got, I don't know how much. I'll probably get a message how much money that the Merchants House has spent
Yeah.
defending itself
Mhm.
against this, because it would just be tragic. If you go to the Merchants House, merchantshouse.org, is it the Merchants House? Or if you go to merchantshouse.org,
Google search for Merchants House.
yeah, see Google. There's this thing called Google. And you type in the Merchants House Museum in New York City, it'll take you to the website, and you can read all about what's happening
Yeah.
and what you can do to help. They have these public debates where you can go in and speak your mind, or you can hear the pros and cons, and you hear both sides talking about what they want to do. But we can't lose the Merchants House. One, I need something to do on the weekends, and I like coming here. And two, we need to preserve this.
Yeah, and I think too, like if you've never been here and you have any interest in coming, come and you'll see why it would be so damaging and what we would lose, and that the uniqueness of this house. I mean, I'm not sure what it's rated on TripAdvisor, but out of everything in New York, it's in like the
It's rated
top.
very highly.
Yeah, it's rated very highly. Everybody who comes here loves it.
Yeah.
And it would just be such a shame if we were to lose it.
Lee, the name of the book is Conjuring Philip?
Conjuring Up Philip.
Conjuring Up Philip.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's not published anymore, so you have to buy a used copy, I think, on Amazon, but they still have it.
Yeah, I think I got a digital copy on my Kindle.
Oh, yeah? Oh, cool.
I think.
Yeah, and then.
It's a great book.
There's this book too, The Poltergeists by William Roll.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
William, I'm typing it
And he
in.
was one of the, I think he was, he's considered one of the first people he coined the term RSPK,
Right.
actually, and we were talking before the show, the first case that he investigated where he coined RSPK was actually in Long Island, New York,
Mhm.
Seaford, Long Island.
Secret, which is where I don't want to say Seabury's based. Seabury's buried out on Long Island. I just don't know where. I got the name of the town. But yeah, but all right, we gotta go. So next month, it's excuse me, May 20th.
Yes.
We're gonna be here with Lisette Coley, who runs the Parapsychology Foundation here in New York. We'll talk all about that. It's one of the longest organizations studying the paranormal. We will talk about her grandmother, Eileen Garrett, who is a famous medium. I believe she worked with Hans Holzer at some point, and just a fascinating lady. And Lisette is a great friend. I love her dearly, and she's got great stories, and she'll be great to have on the show. And you're going to be here next year.
I will not be here next time, unfortunately. But yeah, but I'll be back in June.
All
And
right.
actually, we should talk about what we're going to do in June.
Yeah, we should talk.
You can't zoom in either.
I mean, I might be able to zoom in. Yeah, I could probably zoom in.
Cool.
Yeah, I'll actually be in Long Island, not far from Greenport, where the
Okay.
library is.
Oh wow!
Oh
Wow! Maybe do a remote from the library.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Oh.
And I think we're going to try, and if it's okay with the house, we might try doing one of the shows outside the backyard. The backyard is lovely, and it gets so hot in here in the summer. So
Mhm.
anyway, we're yakking away. Thanks so much. Always enjoy. Well, thank you guys. We want to thank everybody for showing up and tuning in and listening to us yammer away. We hope we kept you guys awake. And visit the Merchant's House. Visit the Merchant's House online. Help preserve this beautiful, beautiful landmark time capsule, and one of my most favorite places in the world. And I'm sure I'm not the only one that feels that way. It really is a special place to be. So we love you, and happy spring. All
Bye,
right.
everybody.